Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Amber Lee for those of you who've not been here before, and if you have, how are you doing? Are you getting your nutrients? Are you taking your vitamins? Drinking enough water? Shit's important. So today, as you can see from the title, I'm doing a new Unsolved. I will link the last one up here in the little eye and as well as in the description box below. So what I'm doing is I'm going in the order of the states. So I started with Alabama, Alaska. So today, wherever the thing is, Alaska. Before we jump into the video, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up to let me know that you want to see more unsolved mysteries. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos to come, including the unsolved mysteries. Also, before we start, I do want to apologize if I pronounce anything wrong, and let's just get into the video. So for today's Alaska Unsolved Missing Persons, there are two. We are going to be talking about Amy and Scott Fandel, who went missing September 5th, 1978. I want to make sure I got that right. The two children, Amy, who was 8, and Scott, who was 13, both went missing from their cabin in Sterling, Alaska. On the evening of September 4th, 1978, Amy and Scott went out to dinner with their mother Margaret and their aunt Kathy at a bar and restaurant called Good Time Charlie's. The two kids were out to dinner with their mother until around 10 o'clock, and then their mother and their aunt dropped them off at their cabin around 10 o'clock, and the two went back to the bar. So while Margaret and Kathy went back to Good Time Charlie's, Scott and Amy went over to their neighbor's house, which they were really good friends with their neighbors. They played over there all the time. They went to school together. They knew each other very well. So they went over there to play, and then they were sent home, but it was unclear as to what time they left. A neighbor reported that they saw a light on in the Fandel home around 11:45 p.m., so that would have been around 2 hours after the two were dropped off. Margaret and Kathy came home from the bar around 2 to 3 in the morning, and when they walked into the house, it was very odd because all of the lights are off, and that was really odd to Margaret because both of her children were scared of the dark, and they like even slept with the lights on. So she thought that was very weird. But also, on the stove, there was a boiling pot of water, and then there was a pack of macaroni noodles and a can of tomato sauce. And apparently that was like their favorite like nighttime snack. Since they couldn't find them, they assumed that they were at the neighbor's house staying the night. So like I said, since they thought that they were at their neighbor's house, they just decided to go to bed. Margaret got up the next morning, went to work, and during her workday at some point she called the school to talk to Amy. It was never said as to why she called to talk to Amy or anything, but they told her that she wasn't at school. So then Margaret started to freak out like any parent would, and her boss wouldn't let her leave work. The neighbor kids were walking home from school, and obviously they were neighbors, so they asked Kathy why, Scott and Amy weren't at school that day. And that's when Kathy then realized, one, they didn't stay the night before, and two, obviously they weren't at school. So she then calls Margaret. Margaret then either leaves or whatnot, and they call the police and file a missing persons report. And that's the story. There was no like evidence found, like there was no fingerprints. At least to my knowledge, there was no fingerprints, there was nothing. They've never really had any leads or anything. So a little bit of a backstory on the Fandel family. Scott and Amy were half siblings. So if you're unsure of what that means, is they have the same mom, but they have two different dads. Margaret met Roger, who is Amy's father, when Scott was 2. So Roger basically raised Scott. Margaret and Roger did not have the best relationship, though. There was a lot of abuse coming from Roger. He had a very bad temper, and he's more than willing to admit that. And so the couple separated earlier that year in 1978 in January. So it was 9 months before the kids went missing. Roger then moved to Arizona and kind of just lived his own life. Margaret did not deal with this very well though. She had a hard time adjusting to the single mom life. She had to work a whole lot, and when she was working a whole lot, she wasn't around the kids very much, which was probably why they were left home alone a lot. And she also developed a drinking problem. This is where I'm going to talk about Margaret and just stuff that just doesn't make sense, not only to me, but to a lot of people. But before I say anything, I do realize that this is different times. Like in the 70s, my dad was born in the 70s. So I have no recollection of what life was like in the 70s. I'm a millennial. So I know life as a millennial. Like, that's just how my life is. So things are a lot more strict. There's a lot more rules, I guess, to parenting. The thing that really stood out to me was the fact that the kids were out until 10 at night. It was a school night. Like, my bedtime was definitely 9 o'clock. But then she goes out drinking, and she works the next morning. I think she had to work at like 8:30 or something like that. So she's going out drinking until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning while her kids are at home by themselves. It doesn't make any sense to me. And also, there's just so many things that this woman did, and I just am like, what? Like, how do you parent like this? Anyway, so she comes home, the pot of boiling water and the noodles. Like, that's just one thing that gets me. How is your child going to just up and leave noodles on the stove? Like, and you're just gonna not think anything of it? Maybe I'm just like over paranoid and I watch way too much crime stuff. But if I come home, all the lights are off, there's a pot of boiling water on the stove, I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going over to the neighbor's house, knocking on the door and being like, hey, are my kids here? It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I understand that it's hard adjusting to being a single mother, and, you know, she had an issue, and I get that. Like, I understand that having an addiction can drive you to do things that, you know, most people don't think is normal. So I get that, and there's a lot of things that I'm just like, it was a different time. Like, I get that. Like, it was a different time. Things were different back then. But I just don't get how you can go to bed at night and not know for sure where your kids are. So now that that's all out of the way, there's only one, like, real theory. Other than, there's a lot of people, there's kind of two theories. And there's a lot of people who think, not that the mom did anything, but they think that she knows something just because of how she acted and whatnot. But I don't think just because she showed signs of bad parenting, in my eyes, that she knows something. The other theory is that Roger, which is the father of Amy, stepfather of Scott, has something to do with it. And this is the biggest theory. There's a lot of people who believe Roger did it, and they have their own reasons for it. Margaret's brother even thinks so. He thinks that, and it's very specific what he thinks. So it's kind of weird how, like, specific his thoughts are. He thinks that Amy is alive and Scott died at some point, whether it was an accident, whether it was on purpose. And he thinks that Roger took them to raise them. He even went as far to give specific cities as to where she was. But the police looked into it and they didn't find anything. But it's just so weird that he listed specific cities and was like, Scott died. Wow, pessimist. Like, how are you just gonna assume that your nephew died? I don't know. That's just so weird to me. But also, people have found Facebook pages for everyone in the family, and apparently it's proven that these are their Facebook pages. And there's an Amy Fandel Johnson. on the Facebook page of Roger. So a lot of people are like, that's Amy, like, and apparently it looks just like her, but there's no evidence to support it. There's nothing that they can be like, oh yeah, that's Amy right there. Unless, you know, she comes forward and is like, hey, I'm Amy, like, whatever. But it's just, that's one of the theories. There is a woman who allegedly, they're not sure if they actually dated or not, but she allegedly dated Roger, and she came forward to the uncle and said, I will give you $5,000, or I will give you $5,000. If you give me $5,000, I'll give you information as to what happened to the kids. But the police looked into it, nothing came up. That's just that. The most frustrating thing about this case is that there's no leads. There's no evidence. There's nothing to go off of. There's just speculation, and that's what's so frustrating. Like, there's no factual information, which to me is so frustrating because it's like, I can't, like, I don't know what, like, I don't know what I think. Like, I don't think the dad is involved. I think people who just straight up say there's nothing is going to be found, nothing is going to be solved until someone says something. And that might be the case, but honestly, I don't, like I said, I don't know where I stand in this case. Let me know what you guys think happened, if you think the dad is guilty, if you think the mom is guilty, whatever the case may be. If there's anything I missed and said wrong, leave that down in the comments. Also, yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you. Like I said, it's a very frustrating case just because there's no leads, there's no evidence, there's nothing. There's just speculation. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, so I know to keep doing these videos. Also, don't forget to follow me on all my social medias and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, stay golden, stay beautiful.
Call me the fireman.